This is not a drill. This is hands down the best moment of To Your Eternity. The moment we all have been waiting for, the moment we thought would never come. The day has finally arrived when our boy wakes up in Bawn and is immediately greeted by our spiritual friend, and he opens those doors to everyone before his eyes to see the rapid revival. There was the doubts, there was the skepticism, oh no, we'll maybe get a person here or there, and To Your Eternity episode 19 of season 2 said, no, they all coming back. And this is one of those rare cases where a show revives all the fallen that stuck around soul-wise, and it doesn't feel like an ass pull. It doesn't feel like the stakes have been removed. Instead, once again, this author is changing the course of where To Your Eternity wants to go. And when we get season 3, it is not going to look like anything that we've ever experienced. This show is an absolute masterpiece. You know how I said, I think it was in last video or the video before that To Your Eternity is like a top 10 anime at this point? I take it back. It's not a top 10 anime at this point. It's a top 5 anime at this point. You can disagree all you want, but that's how strongly I feel. I have never been so excited watching an episode of anime than I was the first 5 minutes of this episode. Holy. Now, if you want to see that full excitement that caught me by surprise, head on over to my Patreon, consider supporting. We got that full live reaction available, and I gotta admit, not to hype myself up too much, it's a pretty damn good live reaction, so I'd consider watching if you're interested. This was a 10 out of 10 episode. This has been a 10 out of 10 season, and every time I think I can't like this show more, I like the show more. Once in a while, you find that show that just clicks with you. And honestly, season 1 clicked with me. It hit every right note, and I would consider season 1 a 10 out of 10 anime for me. Personally, the issues that I might be able to find for myself, they weren't even distracting enough for me to downgrade that show. It was just what I wanted to see. But this show did something remarkable, where its second season took that formula and just made an even better arc. And I keep saying it, once Bawn was introduced, this show reached new territory. You had a character that stuck around, and yes, Bawn's the only one who's not brought back yet. Do I think he will eventually? Yes. I feel like eventually there will come a point where either the world's safe enough, whether that's next episode, whether that's 100 years from now. I think eventually Bawn will come back, but it makes sense that you need to keep the body that allows you to see the spirits, so as we see by the end of the episode, for the first time, the Knockers realized they couldn't beat Fushi, because no matter how many lives you take, lives were being added. So rather than lives being decreased, they were actually being increased. So, I mean, there was only one way to defeat an army like that, and that is to have an immortal army yourself. And I think what's interesting is it's a very sneaky moment, but the fact that Fushi feels weird initially, he's like, I don't want to play God. Like, I don't want to just bring people back and, you know, have the concept of life more or less not mean anything. He doesn't say exactly that, but that's more or less what he's saying initially. But when you see all the people who had their lives taken far too quick, this is going to be a very interesting territory, because come season 3, the next arc, which I know it does change. Every arc does change with To Your Eternity, and I've heard nothing but that with where the next season would go. I know nothing about time period, I know nothing about subject matter, but if I had to guess, it would have to be something where it would have to bring up the concept of how does Fushi pick who gets to come back? How does Fushi determine? Is it people who got their lives cut too soon? You know, when you think about political shows, whether a Game of Thrones or anything where like a king, a queen, has to determine who do they send resources to help and, you know, who has to suffer. It can be a very similar situation where Fushi has to sit on a throne and look at spirits and say, I can't bring you back. There's a lot of potential. Or potentially, Fushi will be an incredible god. We don't know, right? But the fact remains, we are about to enter a brand new territory that To Your Eternity fans never thought possible. And whether we get a massive time jump, whether it's 50 years, 10 years, 1,000 years, I don't know. But for the first time, it feels like we actually have a way to push back the Knockers. And Fushi, now that he's no longer the one having to transform and fight the Knockers, he now has his friends. He has this army that's doing the work for him. He's just expanding his reach. He's taking down the trebuchets. The fact that the potential of him connecting to the entire world is an actual possibility now, and the Knockers are running for the hills. This is brand new territory, and if my excitement isn't getting this across, let me just put it into words. This be a masterpiece. There was so much to love. The family reunion seeing best bear there. I mean, that bear, I honestly think has been underappreciated in this fandom. Out of all the characters that have stuck around, that bear, he wanted to just be Clifford the Big Red Dog, and March riding on him like Clifford the Big Red Dog was wholesome as can be. And they snuck in some nice comedy, Maesar being like, oh, is that what you're into, Fushi? Because he's like almost saying mama to March, and I'm just like, you didn't have to sneak in that lolly joke, but you did so, and I appreciate it. But the fact remains that Kaku is an interesting character. Now, as someone early into this show, I was like, you shouldn't be blamed for your ancestors' crimes, right? Each time we had a new one pop up, I gave the benefit of the doubt. And I think Kaku truly does love Fushi and truly thinks that, you know, he has his best interests in mind, but he's a crazy bastard. And I think, honestly, the only way we solve this family storyline is they gotta stop breeding. They gotta stop existing. And this is coming from someone who is pretty like, you shouldn't be blamed because Heisei was a crazy bitch. Like, that's how I've been feeling. But man, like, it's just a psychopath, right? And I mean, I appreciate the fact that he separated himself at the end. But man, if this image don't give you feelings of like, okay, we need to stop. We need to end this family. I mean, that's how I honestly feel. But seriously, this is the best moment. This is the best moment of To Your Eternity, and there is a lot to pick from. But the number of times everyone watching this season has probably felt at least once, some more than others, Bond tell him, but not knowing because he'll lose his form seemingly, and if he loses his forms, how can he defend against the knockers? Now we see, instead of burdening it all on himself, bringing them back, valuing life, not wanting to constantly revive them, seeing what that did to the previous three, it haunted him. Trying to keep them safe. When he revives, he initially heals their wounds so they're not, you know, bloody and broken and all that. There is so much potential. And in any other author's hands, I would say this is where the story has to end. We now have the concept of mass revival. There's no longer a threat. But I think the brilliant thing about To Your Eternity is it's more than the threat against knockers. It's how the world changes with a god among men, and how that god among men feels so human yet holy yet demonic all at the same time. And I'm so interested to see where we're gonna go, because he could revive Bon at any point, right? And if so, maybe he could go the direction of having him be like an advisor, saying which spirits are around or something. I don't know. I think it makes the most logical sense for that to happen when he's convinced he doesn't need to mass revive people like he currently is. But all things considered, this was the play. This was the episode that truly has shaped this show into a timeless classic to me. Now, I've been saying I love it. I've been saying this is like in a top 10 for me. But this is the moment that truly has shaped the show into a timeless classic for me anyway. People can feel free to disagree, of course, but my excitement, my passion for the show will not change, and that is an absolute fact. I would love to know what everyone thought of this episode. I wanted to make sure I didn't use any images of the mass revival in my thumbnail, so I made it look a little more demonic than it actually turned out to be. But what did you think of this? Because this is the moment. But thoughts yourself down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Be sure to ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload on the channel. And of course, as I mentioned, I got that full exciting live reaction available on my Patreon, so consider supporting if you want to see that. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.